Right, we'll get started. Thanks everyone for joining. It's good that you could all spend the time today, and it's much appreciated from the Teams Fest team for organising today's session. So yeah, really good that it's a free community event. It's my first time talking about Teams, so I would suggest anyone that's willing to talk about Teams in the future, get going and have a go yourselves. So today's session is about using Microsoft Teams as a platform to build business applications for internal and external users. So just a bit about me. My name is Andy Hodges. I'm the founder of ThinkShare. So my background's in SharePoint project management, but more recently become more of an Office 365 consultant, helping companies with adoption of Teams and SharePoint. So traditionally background's been creating a lot of intranets and a lot of portals for various types of businesses, some internal roles, some consultancy roles. So if you need to contact details, that's my email address, and that's a QR code in case you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. So yeah, so I think I've been using undertaking some projects on Teams probably for the last 2 years now, and that's been a bit of adoption, building a few little applications as well, and helping companies really drive that adoption through their company. In a tandem with SharePoint, like I say, I'm a bit of a SharePoint pod, so I'm have a bit of an affinity to SharePoint, so you'll see some of that through the things I'm going to show you today. So just a bit about what we're going to be talking about today, and that's about using Microsoft Teams as a business application platform, and also, so that's really sort of how you do that for your customers or in your organisation, and then some examples of some applications that I've been worked on in the past, and then just really things to watch out for if you're using external users. So yeah, I'll go through that as well. Okay, great. So why use Microsoft Teams as a platform for your applications? So what you'll find is a lot of companies have spent a lot of money on getting into Office 365 or deploying it to their business, and they need to recoup some of that cost. So if you're using Teams as a platform for some of the sort of low-hanging applications, that can really maximize your investments. It also can reduce your application sprawl and stop some of the shadow IT that's out there as well. So a lot of businesses will have, if they're not providing a good service to their users, then the users are going to go out and buy some software themselves or use some software themselves if things aren't locked down. Or there's always the case that a director will say, right, we need this software today, let's go and get this, and they get that software rather than using something they have and using a platform that's readily available. So by using Teams and as an application platform, you're reducing that application sprawl and the shadow IT that can be out there. Deploying projects, so undertaking a project and deploying an application is pretty low risk in Teams, especially if it's already rolled out, so you don't have to do too much. The users have already got the Teams applications on their laptops or their phones, and they're just receiving a new team with some tabs and some content in it. So the risk of rolling out a new application is reduced. You've already got the cross-platform, so you've already got all your Android apps, your iPhone, your Mac, your now Linux, and obviously Windows 10 clients and the web client as well. And so you really don't have to cater for too many more devices if you're rolling out Teams, an application in Teams to those users. Microsoft are pretty good at making things secure and controlled. It's an enterprise product, so we don't have to worry too much about the security of the product. However, there are still things you need to do to with your security team and make sure that everything's ticked, all the boxes are ticked. But you know, that we know it's a good product, and we don't need to do too much there in terms of security. So another reason why you might want to use Microsoft Teams as a platform is it's quick to implement. Building a new team and some tabs and content is quick. You know, it's not going to take you too long. You can actually build a very good proof of concept there and then. You don't have to use any code. So the things I'm going to show you today are no code solutions, but if you did want to build code, we all know that you can extend. I think extendable is a word, but you can extend Microsoft Teams using apps, so the SharePoint framework, cards, bots, so that those sort of higher level use cases and scenarios that you may have in your organization, you can still do that using Microsoft Teams. So just a bit about application governance. So really the start of looking at building applications in Microsoft Teams is having some governance of the applications. So things like having an Office 365 first policy. So what I tried to do with some of the customers that I've worked with is look at having a kind of a mechanism to evaluate whether their user requirements can be built in Office 365 first. And then, if it can't, look at other software after that, rather than looking across the board. Because you made the investment in the platform, you know, it's got single sign-on. In most cases, your users are using a fair chunk of the applications. So why not use what you've got rather than look elsewhere? So that's the first thing I try and get with organisations is an Office 365 first policy. To do that, you need business buy-in, so they need to kind of agree that is the way forward, and that they are going to, you know, look at Office 365 first, look at Teams, and then rule it out rather than looking across the board at other bits of software. And then the other thing that is good to do is to have all software requests go through a central governance body. So that's along the lines of could be you know, a product council, it could be an Office 365 governance board, whatever they may be. Any requests go through there, and the really starting point of any requests is coming through in some cases a help desk. So if requests are coming through, for instance, in ServiceNow or other ticketing software, then there needs to be a policy to deal with those tickets and where they're going to go, rather than, you know, IT just agreeing to allow those sort of requests. So a user might request a bit of software. So rather than saying yes, you can have a bit of software, there needs to be a mechanism and a governance in place to actually review what their user requirements are and see if Office 365 can do that without having to purchase other software and spend some more money on that bit of software and implementation as well. So they're also, I guess, looking at existing policy versus reality should be reviewed. So, you know, you may have an IT policy that says you can't use Dropbox, WhatsApp, and Box, but that might not be the case unless the business, you have buy-in from the business, and the IT have kind of not enforced a policy, but in some cases enforced it through group policy and locking down desktops, but have told users they can't use these products, and the business are on board with that. Then, even though your policy may say you can't use those products, you might have users using those, and that's the case. So hopefully you can, someone just saying they can't see my screen, can just someone send a message saying yes, the rest of you can? Anyone? Yeah, you can see it. Okay, just must be one person. Just wanted to check. Thank you very much. Also, what you might find is if you're going to use a Teams as a platform, sometimes, even if there is a request for software, you may have to allow it, or you may have to allow users to use that bit of software. And what that can be is you might be working with another organization that has something they want to bring users, they want you to use, or you might have a customer that they want you to use a certain bit of software. For example, Trello, if they're running a multi-million-pound project on Trello, for example, they're not going to change over to Planner to do that. So you need to have a policy around what do you do with those bits of software and how do you bring them into Teams. So that's a bit about application governance. I think that's important to think about as well as just building applications for Teams. So just some examples of some applications that I kind of worked on, just to give you an idea of the things that you can do. And these applications also kind of help with adoption. So in some cases where we've been rolling out Microsoft Teams, we've kind of boxed these, we're calling them applications, it's a service to the business. And they help to gain adoption. So if people are using it across the business for certain use cases, that's really good. So one of the things that we've worked on with a customer is board meetings. So this is kind of a common scenario for a lot of companies where there's a group of users who meet regularly that form the board of a company. And they may or may not be classed as internal employees. In the case that I'm about to show you, they're classed as external employees, external users. So they don't have internal accounts, so it's slightly different from internal users. Now, external users may have a number of different devices as well. So what you might find, so that's really good where Teams comes in. Generally, what they'll have, they can use Teams on. So that's really good with external users. And then if you want to, one of the scenarios that they had, this particular customer, was they wanted to make and save notes on board papers. So they wanted to be able to view the current PDF of board papers and make some notes on it, and then save those notes. So although Teams didn't do that, I'll touch on how that was achieved later. They also wanted a shared calendar. So we all know how fun shared calendars are in Teams and SharePoint. So came up with a solution there, and it works. It's not ideal, but it works for them. And they also wanted a contact list of board members and some policy and procedure sections. So this is where the kind of the content management of SharePoint comes in, where you're kind of utilising the I suppose the platform almost underneath Teams to surface content to users. So let's just have a little look about how we put together that application. So we created a team for the board meeting and just called it the board portal, board team, and had a number of tabs. So within Microsoft the Teams client, you would see your latest board paper, you would see your files tab, you would see your board contacts tab, your policies and procedures, your board calendar tab, and your chat. So those were the kind of the tabs across the top. Now, where they actually went, we had, so obviously files is a document library within SharePoint anyway. The contacts tab was a contacts list, so we created a custom list of contacts and surfaced that within Teams. And the policy procedures tab was also a SharePoint document library. So we're kind of utilising, let's say, the content management and the file storage and list capability of SharePoint, surfacing that in Microsoft Teams. The board calendar, because the users were external, there wasn't an easy way to get a calendar to them. So what we actually did was create a shared calendar and publish it through Exchange. So you can actually surface that in a tab in Teams. So that worked quite well. It was able to be maintained by the internal users, and then the board members could see that calendar and see what was going on that calendar. So that was quite a good little solution. So just to give you an idea of what that looked like, it had a load of tabs. It's, like I say, fairly basic. but it met their requirements without having to buy other software. So it met their requirements in terms of storing documents, storing contracts, register of interest, travel policy, etc. It met their requirements in terms of having a calendar and the latest board paper. So that's really, I suppose, a simple example of what you can do to stop having to buy third-party software. Because I actually worked on for a customer, it was probably 10, 12 years ago, to actually create a SharePoint board pack, bit of software, and that was really complicated and there's a lot of coding involved. Things have moved on now, and we can now do sort of 90%, maybe 85% of what that product could do just in Teams. And the solution that they actually went with was to have Surface Go. So they actually gave out Surface Goes to each of the board members, which was quite good of them, really. And then they could then access Teams through that. They also purchased some PDF software, which enabled the board members to download the latest board pack, and they can create notes on it and then store that again on their Surface Go. So that really gave them the ability to, what they wanted, really, replacing the paper with electronic, but still being able to make notes on it. If you've ever looked at requirements for board meetings, making notes on the paper is a really big thing that people want to do on their own notes on their own papers, because it's a big pack, so you can't always you can't go through that with comments or in a Word document, etc. It needs to be done like that. And then an external account was set up for each board member. So there was some training and guidance done for that, and they were given an external account. So that's really, I suppose, one example of an application. It sounds fairly simple now. There was a bit to work out, and then it was there's a lot to do in the end in terms of I suppose working out the kind of the usability of it. This had to work. This needed to be trained to the top board members of this national company, so it couldn't go wrong. So even though it was fairly simple from what you've seen today, there was a fair bit of work that went into making sure that the usability was correct. So I had a quick question which I'll answer now. So the Surface Goes, they weren't managed by MDM, but there was going forward, they did want to do that. So that was one of the things that the sort of the next project on their Office 365 rollout was mobile device management. So they would be managing those devices moving forward. So just the second part of second application that something you can do with Teams that we were asked to design and look at was a coaching platform for elite athletes. So this particular organisation had quite a number, I think it was about 120 elite athletes, and they wanted to be able to create a platform where the athletes could communicate with their coaches really anywhere in the world, because they could be anywhere competing. And the athletes weren't employees. That was really important, that they were external users as well. And they had all manner of devices. So this needed to work on phones and on laptops as well. And they also wanted to create a portal for athlete information. So all the information would be put onto this central portal. So news, policies, procedures. I'll show you a bit about what was there in a second, and all that information was then available to every athlete. So I mean, when I mean external, I do mean guest users, to Alex. So that's that really enabled them to then push that information to those athletes. And this coaching platform, because it was particular to each athlete, they wanted a team per athlete. So that was the brief, was to create a template that each athlete could have, that someone internally would manage, and that they would then invite the athlete to. So how we did that, just to give you an idea, again, not too complicated, but a little bit to work out going forward. So there's a number of tabs in the Microsoft team, and a lot of those linked off to a central athlete site. So we created a separate SharePoint communication site to store some of that information and surface that within Teams. So there was internal users that were managing the content in the athlete site, and then that was just all the athletes obviously then get the data updated. It was easier to do it like that than to try and publish data to each individual team. So what that looked like in reality was something like this. So we did this. There's a program calendar. There is some information for the athlete's family, and so there's what they call nearest and dearest, so that they could then know when the events were, know where they were going to be staying, all that kind of stuff. There's some education information links and some memberships, some pretty bog standard links in SharePoint. There's some news, and then there's an athletes directory. I've put the team in today, just so I know they're elite MVPs. So they wanted to, even though there was all these athletes, they didn't quite know, I guess, what who each others were. So there was some information behind each of these athletes that got put into a directory so that people could contact each other, and for the coaches as well. There was a coaching team that looked after a number of athletes. So that was really what really useful information. So you can see that my kind of SharePoint head's been brought into some of this work. So yeah, there is a few bits where SharePoint is used, and it's really exposing that content management system I mentioned before of SharePoint to help surface information in Teams. So just to give you a bit about, I suppose, the solution, we created, I did personally, so I know a little bit about the technical solution, but not a huge amount. I know how to run the scripts. So there was a scripts to deploy templates to a number of athletes. So we would get a batch of, say, 20 athletes in a CSV file with all the details we needed and the permissions and the users that needed to access those teams. We'd run the scripts, so they were PowerShell scripts using PMP and the Microsoft Graph, and they would then take a templated team that we'd created, and they would then build that for each of the athletes, recreating the tabs and all the all the permissions that were needed, and adding the users into those the owners and the members groups of teams as well. So there was an internal owner for each of the teams, and then they would then add in external physios or the external athletes, and then the athlete would then come in and sign up with a Microsoft account or use the one they already have. So that was quite a good solution that we got to work on, and it kind of gives you an idea of what could be built. So there's an ask about what ratio you have between Office 365 accounts and external users. I'm wondering if Microsoft is enforcing any limits. Okay, yeah, so I think there's a little bit about that in a second. So those are, really two examples of what you would you could build applications for on Teams. I'm sure there are plenty more examples that everyone can think of, but that's just really giving you an idea of it's not just kind of a project or a team for a business team or a team for a department, or by a team. You can actually build these discrete bits of a business application on the Teams platform. And like I said, the time to do this and not have to build authentication and have the users already there really cuts down on all the work you'd have to do around deploying a separate technology product. So just a bit around things to watch. So just a few things. I mean, there's plenty more of users coming into Office 365, but signing up. So if the user didn't have an Office 365 account, but the company tenant had been set up, now that was pretty tricky. There wasn't any way around that other than them being given a license. If the organisation wasn't ready yet and weren't rolling out the licenses, we were actually asking them to, in some cases, to give their users a license to be able to use this application. So that's just something to watch. And we find that in some instances, users have, so with Office 365 accounts again, that users have different email addresses and domains. So you might be emailing the user saying, here's your invitation to the site, but their actual Office 365 login is something different. So again, that's just something to watch. We also found that when you're adding a SharePoint tab into a Microsoft team, that the user has to doubly authenticate if they're not got a single sign-on, so if they're guest users, external users. So that's, sorry, I am using external users and guest users interchangeably. I know the term's guest users, but external users are slightly different, but customers call them a lot of the time external users, just for simplicity's sake. And then you've got, so you need to watch that when you're kind of giving people the application on an Android device, for instance, they would sign in once to Teams. Even if the tab was in the same SharePoint site, they'd still have to authenticate again. So this was probably, I don't know, 6 months ago. I'm not sure it changed, but yeah, they would have to sign in again to that particular SharePoint site. So that's just something to watch. Once they get used to it, it's fine. It's just they do it once and then it remembers. So what we did is made sure that the external users had user guides, and also there was a route to support them. So that was a key as well, really, because your internal IT is often geared up to support internal users, but it's not geared up to support external users because they're on devices that aren't supported. The usual answer is no, you're not supported. But if you're inviting 100 external users, then you need to be able to support them from the project team point of view, and then from the business as usual point of view. And then there was a question about any limits. So there is a 1 to 5 limit on internal to external users. So if you've got 1 internal user, you can have 5 external users, and that's if they're using it as your AD Premium features. So if they're not using Azure AD Premium features, as far as I'm aware, and there isn't in SharePoint, there's no limit. I might be told otherwise because there's a bit conflicting information, but yeah, as far as I'm aware, if you invite a user to SharePoint externally, there's no limit, but if you invite them to Teams and you use some of the Azure AD Premium features, there is. So it from me. Hopefully you found that useful. Please feel free to rate the session. Any feedback's good feedback. Please attend the keynotes that are later today, and please hashtag anything. So again, my contact details are there. If you have any questions or answers, I'll take them now. I think I've got about 5 minutes before I have to vacate the office for my wife and take over the childcare. So if we don't get around to all the questions and you've still got questions, best place to contact me is either email or on LinkedIn. But I'll take a few questions now if anyone's got any. Unless anyone's feverishly trying to talk and still on mute, I don't think there are any. So thank you very much for joining. That's really appreciate your time. Hope you enjoy the other sessions. And again, thanks to the team that's been to Chris and the teams that have been doing this. So yeah, thank you very much. And if you do have anything that comes to mind, yeah, please contact me on the contact details. Thank you very much.